The bell above the door rang, but no one looked up. They were too busy laughing. The sound of thick denim brushing against leather stools, old ball caps bobbing over coffee mugs, and the scrape of boot soles on polished wood filled the shop like background static. Comfortable, unchallenged, self-sure. She stepped in through the sun-glared glass door, letting it close behind her without a word. No dramatic entrance, no eye contact, just quiet movement. Her jeans were plain, shirt tucked. Sneakers worn, the kind of woman who had long since learned how to walk without echoing. At first glance, she looked like someone running errands. At second glance, she still did, if you were not the kind who knew what to look for. The place smelled like solvent and scorched coffee. Patriot Tactical, tucked off the main drag in Osage County, had become a local temple of sorts. Veterans talked shop here. Retirees told stories no one fact-checked. The rifles on the wall were cataloged like sacred artifacts. Pride hung in the air like gun oil, thick, familiar, and invisible. Mitch Callahan leaned back behind the counter, arms crossed, his forearms tattooed with fading ink. USMC, Ramadi, 2-5. He was in the middle of a story about a sandstorm op gone sideways. The audience, 4 regulars, ate it up like it was gospel. She ignored them. Instead, she walked the length of the wall, letting her fingers graze the fore end of a Mk-12 SPR beneath a soft lamp. Paused, tilted her head, not in admiration, but analysis, like the rifle was telling her something. Mitch noticed her only after the laughter began to taper. "Help you with something, miss?" he asked, not unkind, but uninvested. She turned and offered a folded sheet of paper. "Custom spec for an SPR barrel," she said. "Threaded for a surefire suppressor. Match grade. 1 in 7 twist." Mitch barely glanced at it before smirking. "You getting this for your husband?" She replied flatly. "It's for me." A snort from the end of the counter. One of the old guys, Johnson, in a faded "Don't Tread on Me" tee, leaned in. "Hell, we got a real operator here. Mk-12, huh? Watching YouTube again?" Mitch chuckled, scanning the paper. "Look, no offense, but this isn't pink pistol stuff. These specs? This is real-world gear, high grade. We don't usually sell mission kit to hobbyists." "I'm not a hobbyist," she said quietly. He tapped the paper. "You sure about the threading? And twist rate? Barrel like this needs someone who knows how to shoot it." "I do." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. But Mitch was already moving on. "Tell you what. There's an airsoft place 2 blocks down. They might have something more your style." She held his eyes. Just for a beat. Long enough to make him blink first. Then she took the paper back. "Thank you for your time," she said. The bell rang again as she walked out. Not one of them moved. Only Calvin Ross, quiet Navy corpsman turned part-time floor tech, watched her go. His smile faded. His fingers stilled on the ammo box he had been stacking. Something about the way she stood, how she waited, how she had not argued. He noticed the dog tags. No one else did. At 10:22, the bell chimed again. Mitch looked up, expecting the mail guy or maybe Calvin on break. What entered was not a customer, not in the usual sense. The man was early 30s, buzz cut tight, eyes hard and quiet. No name tape, no rank, just a subdued trident patch stitched above his chest pocket. Then another walked in behind him, and another, until 6 stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the counter. Calvin straightened. Mitch cleared his throat. "Can I help?" One stepped forward and placed a sheet on the glass. Same specs, same handwriting. Mitch stared at the page, then at the men. His fingers tensed. Silence hung like a fuse, just waiting for heat. At 10:31, the bell rang again, and she stepped through. Not in jeans this time. She wore Navy service khakis, officer's collar pins, Warfare insignia gleamed like sharp-edged truths. Her walk was measured, gait crisp, posture unyielding. The 6 SEALs stepped aside in perfect sync. She stopped in front of the counter. "Lieutenant Commander Reagan Shaw," she said clearly. "Procurement and operations readiness." "DevGru." The silence in Patriot Tactical was no longer casual. It was surgical. "You were given a chance," she said, eyes locked on Mitch. "What you saw was not a test. It was an opportunity. You declined." Behind her, one of the men placed 6 disassembled SPRs on the counter. Over $300,000 in equipment. Mission critical. Now redirected. Reagan slid a card forward. "Our next armorer has already been selected." She turned to go. Mitch's voice cracked behind her. "Commander, I didn't know." She paused, 1 step from the door. "No," she said. "You didn't. Because you didn't ask." The bell rang behind her one last time. And this time, the sound hurt. The morning after felt colder, though the thermostat read the same. Mitch Callahan stood alone inside Patriot Tactical before opening hours. No voices, no coffee brewing, no laughter. Just the tick of a wall clock and the low hum of refrigerated ammo cabinets. The sheet of paper was still there, creased once, edges curled. He had fished it out of the trash after they left. Now it sat centered on the glass, weighted with more than specks. Mitch stared at it like it might speak. Outside, the parking lot was empty. Sunlight cut long shadows across faded stripes and oil stains. He knew the place like the back of his hand, every shelf, every dent in the counter. But today, it all felt unfamiliar. Smaller. Quieter. He did not touch the paper. He just looked. Across town, in a windowless room beneath a federal annex, Reagan Shaw leaned over a table scattered with case folders and operational readouts. Her khakis were gone. Now it was utility pants, boots laced tight, and a tactical fleece zipped to her collarbone. The ID clipped to her vest bore only her last name, typed clean and capitalized. Shaw. She reviewed the procurement reroute with quiet efficiency. 1 folder open, 1 phone call placed. Nothing dramatic, just adjustments. Logistics, not emotion. But her jaw flexed once, barely. "Armorer's vetting report came back on Callahan," her assistant said. "Machining quality is top 5 in the region. Clean tolerances, reliable when he applies himself." "Then he had his chance," she replied. "Should we blacklist the vendor?" "No," she said. "Just do not rely on assumptions again. Tell supply to forward the order through Depot 7. The assistant nodded. "Understood." But he hesitated before leaving. "Ma'am, you sure he meant harm?" Reagan did not answer immediately. She closed the folder, aligning it perfectly with the others. "No," she said at last. "I think he meant habit." Then she stood. Back at Patriot Tactical, the day moved forward, slow and limping. The regulars returned by late morning, though the tone was different. Johnson kept his voice lower. Calvin said even less than usual. The laughter had returned, but softer, cautious. Mitch did not join in. He moved with a heaviness no one mentioned. At 14:10, a FedEx driver dropped off 2 packages. One was addressed to Reagan Shaw, return to sender. Mitch signed without comment. He stared at the label for a long time, then quietly brought the box into the back room and set it down. He did not open it. That evening, long after the shop had closed, Calvin lingered by the photo wall, rows of framed memories from decades past. Marines in flak vests, dusty airstrips, ball caps and beers, all of them men, every single one. He frowned. "Mitch," he said, as the shop owner passed by, "you ever think about updating this wall?" Mitch stopped mid-stride. "What do you mean?" "Feels like we're missing stories, faces." Mitch looked up. One photo showed him grinning beside a Humvee, flanked by 3 others, all younger, sunburned and loud. Pride had lived in that image once. Now it felt like a time capsule, one that had excluded someone who never asked to be included, only acknowledged. He nodded, slow. "Yeah," he said. "Maybe it's time." The next morning, a thin envelope arrived by courier. No sender, no return address, just his name. Inside was a single printout. No letter, no instructions, no emotion. It was a standard request form, a test order, 2 rifles listed, serial numbers included, specs tight, schedule defined, and in the bottom right corner, typed with precision, "For Armorer, M. Callahan, review only." Mitch held the page like it might vanish. Then he sat down, real slow, and reached for his machining gloves. Not redemption, not yet. But a beginning. Mitch Callahan stood over the lathe, the barrel cradled in the jig like a promise waiting to be kept. The machine hummed low, steady. His hands were wrapped in nitrile gloves, his grip precise. Coolant mist hung in the air, sharp and sterile. He moved slowly, deliberately, not just to get it right, but because getting it right was the only thing that mattered now. The paper with the specs lay taped beside him. Not a copy, the original. He had unfolded it 10 times, memorized it. Dreamed about the twist rate like it was scripture. He worked in silence. No music, no distractions. Just the quiet war between memory and intent. Every cut had to count. Every line was a line back towards something he had nearly lost. Reagan Shaw watched through the glass partition at Logistics Facility 5A as 2 junior operators tested the previous week's batch of gear. She said nothing as one of them adjusted his sling tension, then rechecked the optic mount. Standard drills, standard results. Except she saw the lag, the doubt. She moved to the doorway and called out, "Your hold was off on the 2nd pull." The younger one blinked. "Thought I corrected on the 3rd. "You did," she said, "but you hesitated on the 2nd. That hesitation does not stay here. It follows you downrange." He stiffened, nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Reagan turned to the clipboard in her hand. "New gear coming in next week. Orders were rerouted. Temporary vendor." "Anyone we know?" the senior asked. She paused. "Someone learning to listen." At 11:37, the barrel was finished. Mitch placed it inside a velvet-lined case, double-wrapped the threads, and tucked the QC certificate inside. He checked it twice, then once more after that. By 11:49, he was behind the wheel of his truck, box secured in the passenger seat like it might shatter from judgment alone. The drive to Depot 7 was 28 miles. He took it slow. No music. Just the sound of tires on asphalt and the rattle of his keys against the dash. At 12:26, he parked in the visitor lane. No guards waved him through. No one saluted. Just a clipboard at a desk and a young woman in fatigues checking IDs. She looked at him like he was any other contractor, and for the first time, he was grateful for that. No reverence, no hostility, just the work. Reagan did not speak when he entered the briefing bay. She was reviewing a loadout manifest, sleeves rolled, a pencil tucked behind her ear. Mitch waited. She finished reading, then looked up. "Barrel is in the case?" "Yes, ma'am." "Twist?" 1 in 7, match grade. "Threading?" "Surefire compatible. Tolerances verified." "Gas alignment?" "Double-checked." Reagan walked over, opened the case, lifted the barrel out. She turned it like she was weighing more than steel. She was. After a long silence, she said, "This work is clean." Mitch exhaled, but only inwardly. "I did it the right way," he said. She nodded, just once. "This is a test order, Callahan, not symbolic. Our operators carry what they trust, nothing more. I understand. No, you did not, she said. But you are starting to. He stood a little straighter. She placed the barrel back in the case, closed it, then walked over to a second crate and opened it. Inside were 2 stripped rifles. She motioned to the spec sheet taped to the lid. If this work passes inspection, she said, you get both orders. And if it does not? Reagan's expression never changed. Then we do not speak again. That night, back at Patriot Tactical, Mitch sat behind the counter long after closing. The old photos were still on the wall, but now a new frame leaned against the baseboard, still wrapped, still waiting. He had not hung it yet. It showed a woman kneeling beside a burned-out Humvee in Kandahar, helmet off, blood on her sleeve, face focused. Someone had scribbled Shaw, Casavac 11B on the corner. He had found it by accident. He kept it on purpose. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, the silence felt earned. At 0617, the lights flicked on inside Patriot Tactical. No one else was on the street. Mitch Callahan moved with quiet intent, same routine he had followed for 12 years. Open the register, test the locks, check the inventory by habit, not need. But today, there was one difference. The frame sat on the counter now. Unwrapped, still unsigned. He had placed it there the night before and left it untouched. A test, not of aesthetics, but of honesty. Would he still want it there in the daylight? He did. He reached for the level tool in the drawer and walked to the wall. The old photos, Marines in the Gulf, snapshots from Ramadi, a framed piece of camo torn from his first flak vest, had become familiar armor. But this was different. He measured, marked, drove the nail in slowly, and when he stepped back, the photograph of Reagan Shaw in the ruins of Casavac 11B faced the shop like it had always belonged there. He did not explain it when the first customer asked. He just said, "That one's earned." By midday, the second test order arrived. 2 rifles, field stripped and tagged. Mitch unboxed them at his workbench under full LED. Calvin watched from the side, arms crossed. "You okay doing this alone?" he asked. Mitch did not look up. "I have to be." But Calvin remained standing nearby, his silence offering backup without judgment. It was something more than respect. It was accountability. And in that moment, Mitch needed both. "Those specs she sent in, tightest I've ever seen," Calvin murmured. "Good," Mitch replied. "Means no room for excuses." Miles away, Reagan stood in the far corner of a dusty warehouse, clipboard in hand, watching a dozen recruits run close-quarters drills with dummy rifles. The place smelled of rubber mats and sweat. No mirrors, no padding. Just friction and noise. A young woman, no older than 20, fumbled a mag reload under pressure. Reagan's eyes flicked to her stance, her breathing, the way her hands tried to move faster than her training. "Stop!" Reagan called, her voice carrying without force. The room paused. She walked over, knelt. "Show me your grip again." The recruit hesitated, then complied. Reagan adjusted her fingers by a fraction. "You're strong," she said, "but strength is not speed. Precision first." "Always." The recruit nodded, biting her lip. Reagan stood and stepped back. "Again. Slower. Get it right." The girl exhaled and reset. From across the room, one of the instructors leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "Shaw's tougher on the new ones." The other shrugged. "She trains them like they'll be the last one standing. And sometimes they are." At 16:43, Mitch finished the first rifle. Every tolerance double-checked. Every seal torqued by hand. Trigger pull adjusted to spec, not comfort. He cleaned the receiver twice. When he stood back and looked at it, he did not feel pride. He felt responsibility. Then he started on the second. That night, Patriot Tactical was closed, but the lights were still on. Reagan entered quietly. No uniform. Civilian jacket, boots, and a plain cap pulled low. Mitch met her at the workbench. He did not offer a handshake. She would not have taken it. "Both rifles are ready for inspection," he said. Reagan nodded once. She walked to the bench and opened the case. No words, just wait. She examined each part. Her hands were practiced, her motions surgical. After several minutes, she set the second rifle down. "You took your time," she said. "I owed the time." "You owe more than that." "I know." She picked up the QC sheet, reviewed it, then folded it in half and placed it into her jacket. "I will recommend approval. One batch, one chance." Mitch nodded. "Understood." Before she turned to leave, he hesitated. "There's a photo on the wall now, of Cassavac 11B. She paused, hand on the door. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "I didn't," Mitch replied. "I needed to mean it." For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Not forgiveness, but recognition. And that was enough. She stepped out into the cold. The bell rang once, then fell silent. Inside, Mitch stood still. This was no victory. It was the cost of returning to the right path. The shipment arrived on a Thursday morning. 2 crates, marked priority, DevGru, bore Mitch Callahan's signature etched into the internal inspection tag. No one said anything when the forklift dropped them near the rear loading dock of Logistics Facility 5A. But eyes followed. Reagan Shaw did not check them herself. She let her quartermaster handle the physical inspection. She just stood in the upper-level observation corridor, arms crossed, watching through thick glass as the seals were broken and the rifles unpacked. Each rifle came exactly as ordered, threading perfect, mounts flush, trigger tension within deviation, no flourish, no shortcuts, just the work. She watched for a long time before speaking. "Send a notice to Tactical Command," she said to her aide. "Recommend continuation?" "No. Recommend a pilot contract. 4 months. Conditional." The aide nodded. "Shall I inform Callahan?" "No," she said. "Not yet." Back in Osage County, Patriot Tactical felt different, even when nothing looked different. Johnson still cracked jokes near the register. The shop still smelled like hops and coffee grounds, but something had shifted in the tone. The men watched more, interrupted less. Calvin had quietly installed a new display beside the counter, this one dedicated to female veterans. Reagan's photo sat dead center. Around it, slow additions appeared. Faded Polaroids, a signed group shot from a medevac crew, a Medal of Valor certificate belonging to someone named Captain Denise Wright. Customers lingered by the wall without speaking. Some just stood there, thinking. That afternoon, Mitch heard the bell ring. He glanced up. She stood in the doorway again. Reagan Shaw. Same boots, same precision. But this time, something was different. She carried a long, black case. He stepped forward, wiping his hands. "Ma'am." "Mr. Callahan," she said. No ranks, no distance, just 2 people trying. She placed the case on the counter and unlatched it. Inside was an M110 rifle, stripped to base frame, old but clean. "I want this rebuilt," she said. "Original spec, no upgrades, no substitutions." Mitch studied the wear along the receiver. "This yours?" "It was," she replied. "Afghanistan, Joint Command, Case Vac 11B. He paused. "The photo on the wall." She nodded. "Same op." "Why restore it now?" Her eyes stayed on the rifle. "Because legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you carry forward." He understood what she meant. Not because she explained it, but because he had begun to feel it too. Mitch reached for the clipboard. Timeline? No rush, she said. I'm not taking it back to the field. He met her eyes. You sure? She nodded. This one's for the wall. She turned to leave, then paused near the display. Reagan scanned the photos quietly, her gaze stopping at one she had not submitted, an image of herself crouched beside a young corpsman in a blast zone, her arm around his back, face bloody but calm. You found that? Calvin did, Mitch said. Said it looked like something we'd all forgotten to remember. Reagan studied it a moment longer, then, without another word, walked out into the dusk. That night, Mitch stayed late. The shop had long since closed, but the M110 sat on the workbench like a story begging to be told right. He laid the parts out in precise rows, cleaning tools beside calibration gauges, the photo of Shaw and the corpsman taped to the pegboard above him. He worked without music, without need for an audience. And when he finished the initial inspection, he wrote 3 words on the service order form before filing it. Handled with honor. It started with a phone call from a high school. Patriot Tactical had received hundreds of inquiries over the years, range rentals, gear orders, occasional media requests, but this was different. A career counselor, soft-spoken and direct, asked Mitch if he would speak at an upcoming Veterans in Service panel. He nearly declined, then remembered the photo of Reagan on the wall and what it had come to mean. He said yes. 2 days later, he called her. Lieutenant Commander Shaw, he said, voice low but steady. There's a panel. Students. They asked me to speak about military service. I was wondering, you want me to speak too? She finished. He hesitated. Only if you think it matters. There was a pause. Not silence, just air thick with judgment held in reserve. It does, she said finally. I'll be there. The school auditorium was underfunded and overworked. Folding chairs lined up like regrets. A flag hung slightly off-center behind a wooden podium. Dust clung to the ceiling lights. Reagan Shaw stood at stage left, arms behind her back. No uniform, just slacks, button-down, and a lanyard with her name typed clean and spare. Shaw, R, U.S. Navy. Mitch stood a few feet away, brushing his palms against his jeans. The first speaker, an older man in dress blues, spoke with confidence. He listed deployments like resume lines. Applause followed politely. Then another, younger, in a flight suit. Smiles. A joke about mess hall food. More laughter. Then came Mitch. He cleared his throat, standing behind the mic like a man still earning the right to be heard. I ran a shop, he began. Still do. Sold gear. Told stories. Thought I knew what service looked like. A long pause. Turns out, I only knew what it looked like when it looked like me. The room quieted. He nodded toward Reagan. Then someone walked into my life who reminded me that real strength doesn't shout. It stands still. It waits to be noticed. And sometimes, we fail to notice. He stepped back. Reagan walked forward without paper, without notes. Her voice was calm. I'm not here to talk about medals, or battles, or how to hold a rifle. She scanned the crowd. High schoolers, some leaning in. Some slouched with arms crossed. I'm here to tell you that silence does not mean absence, that being overlooked doesn't make you lesser, and that one day, someone's going to make a decision about you based on what they think you look like. She let the words hang. And when that happens, stand your ground, not in anger, but in truth. The silence was sharp, not uncomfortable, just honest. And then they clapped. Not because she asked, because she had earned it. Back at Patriot Tactical, a new shipment arrived. Not rifles, photos, a framed image from a SEAL team operator. Reagan, mid-sprint across a rooftop. Another showed her leading evac under fire. Both came with a note. Your reputation spreads fast. Thought these belonged where the story's being told. Calvin hung them near the entryway, under a sign that now read, Valor wears many faces. Mitch did not add a word. He did not have to. The shop spoke for itself now, and for her. The door chimed at 09:06. Mitch glanced up from a crate of sight mounts and froze. She could not have been older than 20. Civilian clothes, Air Force-issued duffel slung over one shoulder. Her sneakers were clean, her hands not. She paused just inside the entrance like someone unsure if they had walked through the right door. Good morning, Mitch said gently. What can I help you with? She took a step closer. I'm shipping out next week, she said. Combat Systems Officer track. I figured I should learn something before I get thrown in. Mitch smiled faintly. You came to the right place. From the back corner, Reagan Shaw looked up from a cleared M4. She said nothing at first, just watched. The girl shifted under the weight of being watched without judgment. Mitch gestured. Lieutenant Commander Shaw, he said. This young lady's headed where you've already been. Reagan stood. No uniform, no ceremony, just presence. What's your name? She asked. Emily, the girl said. Emily Green. Reagan nodded. Come with me. They walked to the training bay behind the counter. Cleared weapons, dummy gear, soft rubber floors, a place built for teaching, not proving. Reagan handed her a dummy pistol. Show me how you'd grip it. Emily did. Reagan said nothing for 3 seconds. Then, now let me show you. She adjusted her stance, moved her thumb placement, shifted her elbow. Each correction was clinical, intentional, soft, but final. Emily listened like it mattered, because it did. They spent 20 minutes on stance and transitions, another 10 on mechanical safety. Reagan's tone never changed. She taught like her presence was the lesson. Emily did not notice the crowd gathering quietly in the front of the store. Older customers, some regulars, some not. They stayed back. They did not interrupt. They just watched. Watched the way the girl held herself straighter now. Watched the way Reagan didn't speak unless she had something worth saying. Watched and remembered the way they had failed to look the first time she walked through the same door. Later, as Emily prepared to leave, she turned to Reagan. I was nervous walking in here. That's natural, Reagan said. But remember, discomfort means growth. Emily nodded. I won't forget this. You shouldn't, Reagan replied. Because one day, you'll be the one doing the teaching. Mitch stepped forward with a small, sealed envelope. Something for when you get through basic, he said. From all of us. Emily took it, eyes wide. Thank you. The bell chimed softly behind her as she left. That evening, the shop was quiet again. Reagan stood in front of her photo wall, not admiring, not remembering, just witnessing. She had never asked to be honored, never expected to be welcomed. But here it was, respect not as reward, but reflection. Mitch joined her, arms folded. You ever think you'd change a place like this? He asked. No, she said, but I came through it. He nodded. They stood there a while longer, not speaking. Just two veterans watching a wall that used to have no room for either of them, and now stood as proof. It rained the morning the contract came through, a soft, steady downpour that blurred the windows of Patriot Tactical and pooled in the sidewalk cracks like memory collecting itself. The courier wore a poncho and kept his head down. Mitch signed without a word, then peeled the seal on the envelope as the door clicked shut behind him. Inside, a letterhead from Tactical Procurement Command, 4-month extension, expansion to 12 builds, conditional status lifted, official vendor designation approved. At the bottom, 2 signatures, one typed, one handwritten, R. Shaw. Mitch held the paper for a long time, not smiling, not boasting, just holding it. Then he walked to the back room and tacked it beside the frame of Reagan's M110 restoration, completed, polished, and displayed behind glass with a brass tag that read simply, Casavac 11B, rebuilt, remembered. Later that week, the shop buzzed with quiet momentum. Reagan was not there. She had left the day before, assignment unknown, destination unspoken. She had packed light, spoke less, and when she shook Mitch's hand, for the first and only time, she simply said, "Keep building it right." Now, her absence filled the shop like a presence. Customers still came in, some new, some returning, but they all paused, even briefly, at the wall where her photo hung, next to her rifle, next to the quote etched in steel. "Respect is not owed, it is observed." The phrase had not been sourced. It had not been signed. Mitch had written it the night she left, and welded it into the frame with his own hands. At 1842, Calvin was closing out the register when the bell rang one last time for the day. The man who walked in was tall, plain clothes, with a quiet confidence. He moved straight to the photo wall and stood there, said nothing. Mitch approached slowly. "Can I help you?" The man pointed at the photo of Reagan, mid-sprint, rifle in hand, chaos behind her. "I was there," he said. "Casavac 11B, she got me out." Mitch nodded once. "She's good at that." The man looked around. "Place wasn't like this, was it? Back then?" "No," Mitch said. "It wasn't." The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a patch. Worn, frayed, SEAL Team insignia. He placed it on the counter like a quiet offering. "She ever come back?" "Doubt it," Mitch said, "but her legacy did." The man looked back at the wall, eyes lingering. Then he turned to go. At the door, he paused. "Tell her thanks," he said, "if you ever do." "I will," Mitch said. "And if not, this place already does." That night, after Calvin locked up and the lights were dimmed, Mitch stood alone behind the counter. The shop was quiet, but not empty. The kind of silence that holds meaning. He looked at the photo wall, then at the frame with her rifle, then at the chair she used to sit in during late inspections, leaning forward, sleeves rolled. She had never asked to be believed. She had simply acted like someone who had nothing to prove, and therefore, proved everything. Mitch reached up and adjusted the brass tag beneath the rifle one last time. It clicked into place. Then he turned off the lights and left the frame exactly as it was.